there, the Frugal Crafter with another painting tutorial. This time it is a request by Sarah Hoffman. She asks, could you paint a tutorial for a prairie scene? The colors out there are amazing with the full skies and bright fields. Well, I did find a prairie that I wanted to paint over at Paint My Photo, and the photograph is actually by Rachel Eversole, and it's not really a wildflower filled scene, but I think you'll like it anyway. It's very, very pretty. And I took a photo of my my sketch here, so I hopefully will be able to make that into a little pattern for you to give you for free on my website, and just look below the in the video description for a link to that. Also a link to the photo, definitely a link to the photo at Paint My Photo, but hopefully a link to a pattern as well. Now I wanted to keep a limited palette. I've got 5 colors here, and I usually don't use pre-made grays, but I really wanted to make a stormy sky here, and whoopsie, I'm pressing buttons here, and so I'm gonna use some Paynes Grey because it's kind of a nice earthy gray, and it just makes a really good moody sky, and that's kind of what I want here. So I've wet the sky portion of my paper, and I'm just kind of putting in these dark storm clouds. This is just Paynes Grey, and the reason I like Paynes Grey is that it's just it's kind of granular, and just it's got a really, it's not a flat gray like some grays are very flat. This is a lot of vibrancy in it, and I want to add a little ultramarine in there too. I think that's probably a bit much. Let me mix it out into the Paynes Grey first. See, the nice thing about it being sedimentary is that I can actually go in and I can mix it up or lift it up if it's not quite right. And I want to have a little bit of yellow in the sky too, I think, a little bit of yellow ochre. Actually, I'm using raw sienna. I usually use yellow ochre, but today I decided I wanted raw sienna. So I'm going to give some of that into the sky too, just to warm it up a bit. And a little bit more of the Paynes Grey. This is Cotman. The colors I'm using are Cotman colors. There, how's that for a moody sky? I think that's really nice. I like that sky. Let me just tip it a little bit. I know you're getting some glare there. And if I see any puddles, I might actually be inclined to leave any puddles because that would give me kind of an interesting look. But sometimes I'll just kind of bang it and get the paint moving a little bit. There we go. I really like that. Now that's kind of more like what I want for my moody prairie sky. Okay, so, and what I did, you know, I'll grab a couple different pictures. I might take the sky from one and take the general scene from another one. Alright, so I'm going to, I've got this building here, and I don't really want to tackle the building yet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this kind of band of area just plain, and I'm just going to wet the bottom part of my paper. And this is just an old dilapidated barn or shack. I mean, this board's missing. You can see through it to behind it. So that's the reason I'm going right over it with my water. Because your paint's only going to travel where the paper is wet. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to use some raw sienna here. I'm going to warm it up with a little English red. Now this is, it's always out of my comfort zone anyways to paint something that's not local to me or something I've experienced. I've never been to the Midwest, so you know, this is probably going to look very probably look like a flatlander painting a lighthouse is what it's going to look like, because I've never witnessed this firsthand myself, so it's hard to get a really true look sometimes, but I'm going to do my best and I'm going to have fun. Alright, and I'm also going to tone the top of this building while I'm at it because I don't want it to feel like it's just kind of stark. And let's see, there's some kind of looks like just dry vegetation on the ground. It's just like really, it looks dusty like the Badlands or something. So I'm going to take a little more of that raw sienna. I'm going to grab a little bit of Sap Green. And I think I'm just going to kind of, I'm just twisting my brush. Look, we're still with that big brush. I'm just going to twist some of just little patches of grass in here. And then, of course, because a painting of mine wouldn't be complete, and I have to apologize. Who is it? Oh gosh, I wish I could remember people's names when I'm on the spot. I can never. But there's one girl, and she's like, I love your tutorials, but that credit card scraper, man, it makes my teeth hurt. And I'm sure it's just probably just the microphone just picking it up just so, and it makes an awful screechy sound. Kind of markers do that sometimes, I've noticed. But I'm just gonna do some little flicks with my little credit card scraper. I really like that. You could use the end of a paintbrush, but the credit card scraper seems to be so much finer, and I can get so much better detail, especially like if I look at this big brush, that's not gonna give me a really fine scrape. But the little this little paintbrush credit card scraper will. Oh boy, you know, this is looking like voiceover material here. Let's see, I'm just gonna add a little bit more of that color, Sap Green and raw Sienna, just over near some of the places I've scratched, just to help make it a little bit darker. There we go. And I also want to just kind of give it some pebbly flecks, so I'm just gonna grab some of that Indian red and oops, I got that in the sky. Didn't want to do that. Ooh, should have done something else there. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I can re-wet the sky right there and drag some of that over there so it won't be so. That's alright. Grab a little more of that Paynes Grey. Sometimes that happens though. Gotta know how to fix it, right? Just add a little more of that Paynes Grey in there. I might get some blooms here because I'm going with wet paint on top of a damp surface. But you know what? It's clouds, so I don't really think it's going to be that bad if that happens. We'll see. Yeah, and then you can obviously not do that on your picture. I think I'll do the safer route, go with a stiff bristled brush for the rest of my pebbly stuff here. I can control that a lot better. There you go. Little tip for you. Don't do what I do. I'm gonna restock my Ultramarine Blue. Just want to give some pebbles and dirt there on the ground. There, just give it a little texture. Could even grab some of that sap and even flick up some grasses with that if I want to. What I'll do is I'll just flick up a bunch and then I'll blot off what I don't want. I'll tap in some pebbles too. Gravel, whatever. And then, any place I feel like it's a little much, I could just tap it off. I also want to maybe bang that a little bit, help that those clouds do their thing. I did get a few flecks of brown up there, but that could look like a dust storm. I hear it's dusty out there. All right, I'm gonna blast this with my heat tool, dry it up a bit, and then we're gonna be able to tackle the inlet here. This little looks like more prairie-ness back there. So hang on a second. Okay, we're back with dry paper. Now what I'm gonna do is simply with my clean angular flat brush, whatever you have. Now I have to I do sometimes get some questions about, like, you know, what are your basic supplies? Do you have a video where you show all your basic supplies? I try to go over everything a little bit while I am in every tutorial. Every tutorial is kind of like, I'm not expecting that you've watched any of my other ones and this could be your first one, so that's why I kind of just go over what I'm using. But you're also going to develop your own preferences as far as, you know, what supplies you like. Like I'm using a 3/4 inch angular. You could use a 1/2 inch flat. You know, you could substitute for what you prefer. So, you know, I think there's a channel, there's a YouTube channel my husband watches a lot, and by default I end up watching it, called Food Wishes, and he was asked a very similar question to this, except regarding to recipes and cooking, and he goes, the reason I don't post a recipe is because I'm not teaching you to follow a recipe, I'm teaching you how to cook. So I'm not teaching you how to copy exactly, I'm teaching you how to paint, so you'll be able to paint whatever you want to paint when you know, when you feel like painting. So what I've done here is, does that make any sense? Did it? I have no idea. So what I'm doing here is I just did some raw sienna, and then I'm putting in just, you'll look at my palette here, you'll notice I've got this really muddy mix of ick, but this is really what I want. I want this kind of neutral palette and neutral colors, and it'll come together. I'm very sure it'll come together, but I'm kind of cleaning up and using the values on my paper, and somebody asked on my palette, and somebody asked, what do you mean when you say value? And value is simply how light or dark something is. A value is more important than color, because if you think of value, think about taking a photograph and then converting the photograph to black and white. And think about that with your painting. So you paint a painting. Now, if you were to photograph that and convert it to black and white, would you be able to see what it was? So if you rely on your colors too much for contrast and you know, differentiate, I can't say differentiate. I can't say it. If you rely on your colors to differentiate between between items and things on your picture, then it's going to be kind of a weak in composition picture. You want to make sure your values have enough contrast so that so that's what I mean. So basically, if your values are good, doesn't really matter what colors you're using. But I am I'm working with this kind of just these kind of, I don't know, earthy muted tones. And it's okay if they're getting muddy on my palette because I'm going with really some muddy neutral colors here on purpose. Alright, I want some more of that on there. And so what I'm doing here, if you notice, I don't know if you noticed this, but I'm kind of guiding the eye in a Z-type composition. So I'm bringing your eye through the photo with my value and with the kind of how I've laid things out. I did start with a beautiful photograph, so that definitely helps. And I omitted some things from the photograph. There was some silver metal thing here, and I couldn't tell what it was, so, you know, I didn't want to paint something that I wasn't sure what it was to begin with, so I omitted that. So I'm letting my colors totally cross-pollinate here. But that's alright, I'm using the same colors over and over, so I know they're going to harmonize. A little more blue in there. Way more blue in there. The inside, I can actually go into the inside of my building here because it is kind of dry in there, and I can start to add some of the darker areas. This old decrepit building. Now, I could have switched over to another brush by now. I'm just really, I'm a big brush painter. I like to use a big brush. I find it very liberating. I like to be able to cover a large area. This is a 9x12, so it's not my, you know, the watercolor cards I generally use. But I just kind of like to carve things out of the landscape here, I guess. Carve little compositions here. I'm going to go under the roof of this building. Bring those shadows in. It's, you know, when you're painting, what you're painting is shadow, light and shadows. So keep that in mind. Try not to psych yourself out thinking it's really complicated. It's not. Anybody can do it if you have the desire to do it. You don't have to have the money for expensive materials. You don't have to have an art degree. You just have to have the desire to want to do it. Just going and painting in the building a little bit. Get some of the shadows from on the ground inside the building. Sometimes it's easier to go in with a big brush because then you cannot fuss around with details too much. I want to use a little Indian red on the roof. Hopefully it's dry enough there. I might blast that little section with my heat gun just for a second. Use a hair dryer. If you don't have a heat gun, you don't have to have a heat gun. I just have one always on my table, plugged in while I work, so it just works for me to use that. But use what you have. You know, use a sunny window. Go dry it out outside if that's what you have. Don't let your, you know, don't let a limited amount of I'm gonna have to switch to a smaller brush. Don't let a limit of resources limit your resourcefulness. How about that? I've said something eloquent today. It can only go downhill from here, probably. Alright, I'm just using some more the colors I already have and already been using just to fill in. This is a whole rusty metal roof here. It looks like there was some red paint at some point on this building, so I'm getting that in there. And once you've got some wet paint on there, I want to have some more grays on there. It's a very dour looking establishment, so I want to have this, I don't want to have it too lively in color. I want it to really have that kind of desperate look that the photograph has. The photograph has a very melancholy, desperate look to it. Now when it's all wet, we're going to go back to our favorite thing, which is the credit card scraper, and I'm going to scrape in some of the clapboards here. Now, just go here and there, because if you start spacing them out perfectly, the second you get one that's not perfect, it's going to make the whole thing look out of whack. So you just want to hint. You want the illusion of, you want the illusion that you know what you're doing. You want the illusion that all those clapboards are there. You don't want to make it too perfect. And we'll do the same thing on the side of the building. Right over here, just re-wet that whole area. And we're going with our grays. I think I'm going to put a little bit of the raw sienna in there too. That's actually a little too wet. I'm going to blot that off a little bit. There we go. Don't be afraid. Grab a towel and blot it if it's a little too wet. You don't want to be swimming in that. You don't want it to be you know, bothering you the whole time. And again, in with our scrapies. My apologies to everyone's teeth. It's funny how things sometimes sound really weird on the microphone. They sound fine here, but you know, on the microphone they're just really weird. Now this, I was recommending a brush the other day. This is Lowell Cornell Comfort Grip, and I was talking to a viewer about we were on, you know, typing YouTube, whatever, on the comment section, and she was saying how she has Lowell Cornell brushes and they're rubbish and the hair keeps falling out. And it just, you know, made me think that, yeah, most all paint companies or brush companies will have like a cheap line and a good line, you know, different, because I had mentioned that if you find that toll painting brushes for decorative artists, they're usually great and you can use them for watercolor too, and they're not too expensive. And that's the case with this Lowell Cornell. I think these are probably in the, you know, I'm mid-priced. I would say they're probably like this brush was probably between $3 and $5. I can't see. Sometimes they write it on the brush, but you know, I don't consider that too expensive of a brush, and you know, it will be used, and if it's a watercolor, then it will last a lot longer than using it with acrylics. So we were talking about that, and so I just wanted to make sure I mentioned what this brush was, because I do know that, you know, everyone's on the lookout for a good brush, and you can't always find the same brushes that I'm using, so I like to mention the different varieties that I use. I'm here just painting the blades, and I'm not really filling them in. I'm just kind of just painting the reflection, the dark reflections on the blades, because I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to yeah, I don't want to make it too dark. It's obviously kind of dark in there, but I don't want to make it overwhelmingly dark. And I'm probably not putting in as many as is in the photo, because sometimes you have to minimize in order to make it, you know, not look overworked. Okay, and this thing here, let's see, this should be a little bigger. And you know, I've sketched this on, but I'm finding that the more I observe, the more I notice that it should be a little bit different. Not a little bit different, but I go in and I'm spending as much time looking at my screen with a photograph on it as I'm looking at my paper. You can't see my face, but look at my face. Am I bothered? You can't see my face, but I'm spending as much time looking at the at my photograph as I am looking at the picture, and I think you need to do that if you're trying to copy something. Now, while I have this dark color, I am going to, here's my artistic license. I really wanted to, I felt that my composition was a little weak, so I want to brown that up a little bit. Let me add a little bit of that English red onto my brown there. I wanted to have something that's going to pull your eye through, and since I didn't know what that metal thing in the middle that I omitted was, which really I think was nice in the photograph, but I didn't know what it was, so I'm not, you're kind of if you're a painter, you're kind of a con artist, and you're trying to make people believe that this is what it is. It's not what it is. It's a painting. It's paper. It's paint on paper. Okay? So you're a little bit of a con artist as a painter, because you're making people believe that this is what it is. So in order to make it believable, you have to kind of know what you're painting. So since I didn't know what that was, I felt like I needed a little something. So this fence, having a fence in here that's going to wrap around and get bigger as it gets further down the paper, is a way for me to do that. It's kind of a little sheet, and so that's what I want. I want to put this fence in here for that reason. So that's why I did that, and I also feel like I need to anchor it because I can't really see. There's no fence there. There are a few little fence posts that are kind of around that metal thing that is mysterious. Does anybody know what that mysterious metal thing is? If you guys look at that photo in the Midwest, I'm not a farmer. I have no idea what that thing is. I'm very curious. Inquiring minds want to know what is the crazy metal thing in that picture. Alright, so we are actually at 20 minutes, so that means I am editing this together, but you know, I think I'm going to leave the narration the way it is, because I had so much feedback from you guys saying that you really appreciated the live narration. Alright, I feel like I need a little bit of dark in front of this building. A little more gray. I think I need a bigger brush. This one's feeling a little restrictive. And let me, there are some sticks kind of propping this old dilapidated building up, so I want to get those in there, just kind of, and there's some sticks, they're in yon, just on the ground, and I'm varying my colors as I go. I'm going to make some lighter with my yellow, with my raw sienna, and making some darker with the Paynes Grey and brown. I just want to kind of keep that, I want that contrast, I want the difference, I want the interest. When you're painting the same things over and over again, you got to have that interest in there by varying the color or the shade. Now I'm going to paint some bigger fence posts towards the front, and they're kind of weathered and gray. So I'm going to go into my Paynes Grey, water it down a bit, and I'm going to paint them all in with that, but then I'm actually going to go in with more concentrated, some English red rather, and spruce things up a little bit. But this is kind of like the technique where I'd normally paint it with water first, then go in with the color. This is kind of that technique, except I'm doing it a little bit differently. Oh yeah, that's the gate there. I can hardly see my my original sketch anymore. I've covered it over so much. That's no worries though. That's fine. Don't worry about covering over your original sketch. Okay, because you know, we're painting, we're having fun. No need to worry. I'm going to avoid that for a moment because that's around some wet paint and that's going to bleed. That might cause me to worry. So I'm just going to avoid that for right now. So I like how watercolor just kind of mixes and mingles and blends. Boy, this is fun, isn't it? It's so much fun to paint from a photograph that somebody took that knows what they're doing. All fun, no worries. And, oh, yeah, we got some cross braces under here that I didn't sketch in, so I'm just going to go ahead and put them in right now. Yep. All right. There. Oops, that's a little unrefined, but I can get back to that. Let that dry, and I can go back over that with another layer. Now, I like kind of how the paint, you'll get kind of like a hard edge and then a blended edge because you're blending into some paint that's been drying. You'll just get some really interesting effects, and I hope you can relax and enjoy it, because I know sometimes it can be a little scary when your paint is flowing and maybe doing what you don't expect it to do. But I urge you to you know, let your paint do what it wants to do. You're gonna have so much more fun painting if you just accept the fact that watercolor is like a cat, and it's gonna do what it wants to do. It's not an obedient dog. That would be oil paints. They would be the obedient dog. Watercolors are cats. They have their own agenda. You do not figure into their agenda. They're going to do what they want. Alright. Now, I feel like blotting that because that is just going a little crazy over there. Let's just deal with that situation. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to have to, you know, fill in a little bit there because it got a little white. But now we can have some fun with some details, and I think I'm gonna I really enjoyed this brush. This is a number 4, by the way, Comfort Grip Lowell Cornell, in case you are looking to find that brush. But the thing I like about it is that it has a really sharp point, so I can use this brush kind of like I would a liner or a dagger striper. And there aren't tines on this fence, but I just feel like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if there were? So in my world, there are tines on this fence. Been a long time since they've held anything in, but hey, why not? That's a gate. That probably wouldn't be tines on that one. Just trying to figure out exactly the way that would go. Like that, I guess. I don't know. I should have thought a little bit more about how I was going to connect these before I started doing that, but I think I might also do that over here while I'm at it. At least the close ones where we can see. That's a nice thing about the live narration, I think. You can kind of hear as I am deciding on things, and kind of you can determine why I've decided to do the things that I have done or haven't, or you can see when I've made a mistake. Instead of me, you know, just telling you I made a mistake here and then I decided to do this, you can actually see me make the mistake and figure my way out of it. Or not, it's not even a mistake, it's just, it's kind of how it is. You kind of come across these challenges and then you deal with them. It makes, what keeps you painting, it's what keeps you coming back, because, you know, there's always something new to learn, something new to experience and discover. I'm going to put some shadows underneath this little pile of sticks over here, help them stand out a little bit more. Alright, and I'm really paying attention to the sketch for the photograph for a moment, because I want to think something there. Maybe I'll just put like it's put some just little wires going off the edge there. I feel like I've, you know, like those math problems, and you'd connect the dots, you'd count, and you know, at school, and it would like make a shark. You'd connect all your numbers together. You'd do the little problems, connect your numbers, and you get like a picture when you're done. And then sometimes something would be like way off. You could tell it's supposed to be a shark, but you're like, ooh, something's not right there. You know, that's kind of how I feel my little fence right now. But I'm not too worried about it. I think it's gonna be fine. All right, I want to get a little bit of the Indian red, because I noticed there was what I'm doing there is blotting off. I had too much water on my brush. I was blotting that off. I think I want to put like a little bit of it's a little design or something on that windmill. There's some sort of color there. Maybe it's just rusty metal. I'm not sure, but I want it on there because I think it helps the composition. Now, I think I'm going to do a little dry brushing to add some texture to my fence posts. And the best thing for dry brushing is an old hog brush, kind of like what oil painters use. This is, you know, I'm sure it's from my acrylics or my oils. And you want to load it up. And the bristles are going to want to naturally kind of stay dry. They're really stiff. And so use it to your advantage. And you'll be able to kind of just drag some texture, and it'll make it look really dried out and weathered. But you only want to do that on the items that you're that the viewer will be close enough to be able to see it. So don't worry, don't bother doing this on anything too far away, because the viewer wouldn't be able to notice that detail. If you're standing here, you're not going to see detail on the fence post. It's way over there. So just keep that in mind as you're working. Think, what would my viewer be able to see from where they're standing? And like the clapboards on this house, I think they could see that, so I want to get some of that weathered. Look, dragged across there and dragged across the front. If I want a skinnier side, I'll just kind of go on the edge. And like, it also can look like, you know, like old buildings, you get kind of, if they're wooden and they haven't been painted and taken care of, they can get that mildewy, just that wood rot. You know, you want to get that in there too. I mean, decay can be very beautiful. And I'm going to get maybe some reds and some yellows up there. I don't really want to clean my brush. I'm just kind of keeping it. I do need to wet it a little bit to release some color. But I want it kind of, grungy. I'm doing a lot of dirty brush painting here, because I want it to look old. All right. A little bit of that in there. This is just dry brushing. That's the name of this technique. Drag some of this red across. So it looks like, you know, at one time it was painted back in more optimistic days. Pull a little bit of that back there too. You can also use this to scrub out any mistakes that you may have made. Like, you wet an area, you just scrub it with this and blot it, and then you can get some problems erased, basically. Alright, so now I want to add some little tufts of grass, some more. I'm looking at the monitor and I have to say I'm kind of enjoying this. This isn't something I typically would have said, yeah, I want to paint that. So that's kind of how the requests are really helpful to me. When you guys go to my blog and you click on the tab that says requests and new videos, it's helpful because you know, I would never think to paint a prairie. You know, yeah, I'll paint like, you know, fall leaves of Maine, you know, until the cows come home because that's what I'm used to. But this challenges me, and I'm able to be challenged and, you know, experience painting something different. And I'm also able to help you guys at the same time, and that's just so awesome. I'm happy to do that. And it might take me a while to get to your requests because I get a lot of requests, but I also sometimes skip around if I find like if I see a great photo of something and I'm thinking, oh gee, I'd like to paint that someday, or I'm noticing something in my own area, my own hometown, and I think, oh, that'd make a great artwork. If I see it's just been requested, you know, I might just go right ahead and do that right away. So, you know, if it's something you want to see me paint, go ahead to my request page on my blog and post it there. You know, you can post it here too, but I don't always get them. I don't always think to come back and check. So, you know, it ends up being on a sticky note somewhere in my house, and it may or may not make it as a request again. So if you do have the time and you want to make a request, just go over to my blog and post it there. My blog is thefrugalcrafter.wordpress.com, and there's a link under the video. All right, I feel like I want a little bit of a golden texture here. Golden texture, a texture that is golden. Under the raw sienna. It's funny, I'm always using yellow ochre, but goodness, I like that raw sienna. That's awfully pretty. It's more transparent, I think, and a little more vibrant. I'm going to be using that a lot more often now. You know what? I think I might switch to a bigger brush. This is it's a Creative Mark. It's a 1-inch angular hog brush. I've had this forever. This way I won't get too fussy. Now, I have a little bit of a crisis of conscience with the hog brushes. As you know, I have a plant-based diet. My diet is vegan, but I do have some animal brushes. Most of them I've had for a long time. I've had this one for a long time. I do not buy sables. I have some just because they've been given to me in my stash. I'm not going to throw them away. That seems even worse than to, it's like, well, you can't bring the animal back. But, my family does eat meat. The hog bristle brushes, they're a byproduct of the meat industry. And since, my family eats meat and, I prepare it for them, I will buy hog bristle brushes. The other thing is, they last a lot longer than many synthetic brushes especially for stuff like this. I've never had to throw it away because, I've just worn it out. They just last. And so yeah, I do use hog bristle brushes, but that's a choice. Make that choice for yourself. I'm certainly not gonna judge you either way. That's your prerogative, but I just want to tell you why I do use the hog bristle brushes. I just find that they last. And if you're throwing away, you being rough with a brush like this, you do it with a synthetic brush, it's not going to last you very long, and you're going to end up throwing it away. And then how much pollution is that making when you have to keep rebuying the same thing, and not to mention your budget. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know I don't really talk about being a vegetarian very much, but I just thought I'd put that out there so people know, first of all, where their supplies are coming from, and then they can decide whether they want to, use particular supplies or not. All right. So here I am just taking my fan brush, and I am just adding some scruffy grass in here, and I'm going to be stopping pretty soon because I don't want to overdo it. I'm really kind of liking the way it's coming out. I want to I think I'm going to dry this, ponder it for a minute. I'm going to pause the camera while I do that and come back and do any finishing touches with you, okay? So hang on a minute. Okay, I've dried this. I pondered it for a couple seconds, and I decided that I think I want to pull in some more darks. I want to enhance some of my stuff here. So I'm going to use my Paynes Grey, and I've switched to a number 4 flat, and this is a Robert Simmons Expression, flat shader, and it's again one of those toll painting brushes I told you about. And I am turning my paper so that I can get a really nice angle of attack here for this, and I'm just going to add some more shadows in my little building here. Some broken out beams in the back. I just want to get in there and get them in there nice and crooked so it's obvious that there is problems. There are problems. There is problems with my speaking. There are problems with this building. Alright, I'm gonna darken our little window here, because that's, you know, we're just looking to the vacant hole of this empty building. Now a nice chisel edge brush like this, you can use it sideways like this and just, you know, really make some nice sharp shadows and edges. And don't forget to turn your paper. I'm working on a block, a 9x12 Strathmore 400 series block. And that's handy because it's like kind of already having it taped down, but you can just tape your paper down to a piece of cardboard. It's not a big deal. Or a piece of, I like hardboard from the hardware store. Sometimes they'll give it to you. There'll be like paneling samples, which are like, you know, when they sell paneling for bathrooms and stuff. And when they get discontinued, they'll have just these plain, they're basically just plain pieces of hardboard, and they'll, you know, they'll just give them away because they don't really need them for anything once the thing's been discontinued. So I've got a lot of my just plain drawing boards that way, and it's great because, you know, where I teach classes, like if I'm teaching a drawing class, I can just bring that in and then all the students can have their own. Alright, I'm going to bring that down a little bit lower back there. And so sometimes I'll actually just look at it and kind of like ask myself, okay, is that hitting the ground in the right spot? Would the back of the building be there? You know, as long as you can make it kind of feel, so it doesn't, you know, feel awkward in your mind, as long as it looks kind of comfortable, that it doesn't look like it's going to tip over. You know, I mean, this is supposed to be pretty rough and rugged, but you know, I also want to make sure that it's not gonna make something feel uncomfortable unless I intend it to feel uncomfortable. A little bit of the Sap Green in there. So I want my shadows to fit where they're going. I want them to feel believable and not just, you know, put a shadow in there for no particular reason. And also not cleaning my brush between a lot of colors helps me kind of cross-pollinate and give a little more believability to a scene. You get that, you keep that local color, which, you know, is kind of hard to do if you're not really familiar with the area that your picture is coming from. But it's fun. It's funny, like you can always tell when you're from an area and you're a painter, you can kind of tell whether if somebody's painting a local scene of yours, whether they're from here or they're from away. From away, that's what we say here. I mean, you're not from here unless you're like at least 5th generation. If your parents moved here and you were born here, you're still from away. It's funny. But like I was talking about that once with an artist friend of mine. We were talking about the lighthouses, how like a lot of times people from away, and they come and they paint our lighthouses, they don't include the railing on the back side. They don't show the full ellipse, or, you know, it's something you don't really think of. It's like, you know, but if you're from here, you've been in a lighthouse before. You've been in a lighthouse probably at least once in your life. You know, whether it's a school field trip or, you know, you just have an opportunity to be in a lighthouse. You just don't always have that. You know, I bet if you're from the Midwest, you may never have been in a lighthouse. You know, but those are the things you experience, and therefore you know it, and therefore you paint it, and your experience shows through. You just don't always have that. All right, I'm just going to darken up some of the tines on this fence back here, so it all shows up. Because that can be darker, because that's going to almost be silhouetted as it gets further away from you. And don't worry about making the details in the back too sharp, because things get blurry as they get further away, so they can be very nondescript. And let me tip it one more time so I can take a look at it. And I think I'm enjoying this. I think this is pretty good the way it is. Now, somebody had asked me about signing your name. How do you know where to sign it? Well, I look at it and I figure out where would it need a little something. I feel like I'm going to use some English red, because I feel like it would just be a much better look here. And I'm just going to put my signature right here. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Feel free to share it on any of your shareable places. Pinterest, Facebook, with friends or groups that you think might also enjoy this. W-E-I-R-I-C-H. Can't spell my name and talk at the same time, apparently. And I do appreciate that. It helps me out quite a bit. I'd love it if you checked out my other painting tutorials. You can find a link below this video. And thank you so much for watching. As always, happy crafting.